Okay, we're at Forage Farms, which is just on the north end of the sunny coast. We're at the top end of the Mary Valley, just outside of Gympie. And we're a family farm on about 270 acres here along the Mary River. And we produce pasture-raised eggs, which is our main enterprise. And then alongside that, we're also producing pasture-raised pigs, pasture-raised chickens, and beef, and sometimes sheep, but it's been a little bit wet lately for the sheep, so. Well, from an economic perspective, most of the attention gets put on the chickens. The eggs pay the bills, that's what pays the staff and everyone else. The rest of the enterprises are there to add a little bit of diversity into the system. And then from a landscape perspective, the chickens and pigs equally play a large role in what we're trying to do here. We talk about them as being primary colonising species, which in a landscape perspective, out in the broader landscape, we talk about weeds. That's a big thing about us and the role weeds play in managing our landscapes and repairing the soil and building it. And so we're using chickens and pigs in a similar sort of way. Unlike cattle and sheep, which when being grass-fed like we do, require highly fertile, good pastures, preferably to grow them, chickens and pigs are fed grain, which means we can import a fertility or something to feed them, and they can be grown on landscapes that aren't as fertile. So we use them in the beginning here as a tool to start building our landscape up. So they were fed a grain source, they produced us an egg whilst they pooped out, adding fertility to the system and building it up to a point where we can grow better quality pastures to finish cattle on, which is where we're moving into now. So the cattle are now playing a bigger role in managing the ecosystem, I suppose, especially on our lower country, which floods, so we can't run the chickens down there.
Currently, at the moment, we have, 7,000, around that?
Yeah, 7,500 laying, plus the young ones.
Yeah, it fluctuates a bit depending on how many we've got. We've always got new flocks coming in, and when a new flock comes in to about 50% lay, our older hens are then repurposed into compost, which we can then use back on the landscape. So they come in, they do what they need to do with the land as they live, and then once they're gone, they help out later on in whichever way we choose to work, whether that's down on the lower country or up in the higher country as well. Yeah, so we have 3 different designs of chicken house. 2 of them hold around 400 hens, and then we have our newest design, which is designed to hold around 600. And the chickens are moved twice a week. I do that every Monday and every Thursday, and they're fed once a week. The chickens are fed a pellet mix. I'm not sure exactly what's in it. That'd be more of a Hamish question. But yeah, they're moved twice a week. More depending on what they're doing to the ground. If it's all about just watching and reacting the way you can. If they're hitting a certain area a lot harder than they normally do, then I'll move them further and faster. It's all a bit of just a juggling act to figure out what's best for the land. But yeah, what is in the feed that we feed them?
Yeah, so they're fed a customised pellet blend, which we work on with a nutritionist to get right, but it's mostly based around wheat. Wheat's the main grain in the blend. On top of that, there's obviously protein meal and fish meal to add extra protein on top of the grain. And then we also have a small percentage of GM-free soy. So that's in there because to get the protein levels high enough for a chicken requires extra products. And you have the choice between a legume like soy, or you have, protein meals, which have been processed in a way. So, which one's better? It's hard to pick. We work with the soy at the moment. We'd like to try and find a different legume if possible, but to cover that, we work with a GM-free product, and then at small percentages just to ensure the protein level's high enough for the chicken. Because if that's not at the right level, then it has issues both for the health of the bird and for production levels.
You go, Locke, you can tell them about where our eggs are sold.
Well, I'll start back in the paddock. So the eggs are picked every day. We hire egg pickers, and they come in and collect eggs from each chicken house. They have a conveyor and nest boxes, so the chickens will lay in the nest box. The eggs will roll off the nest box onto the conveyor, which at the end there's a roller belt, and they're able to roll it up, collect the eggs into crates, which then go back to the pack shed into a cool room. And then every Tuesday we have pack day, where the eggs are washed, graded into different sizes, boxed, and then over the next 2 days after that sent out to our shops in Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast and Gympie. That ranges from cafes to IGAs and some restaurants as well.
Well, we've seen big changes. When we first arrived here, particularly in the chicken area, it was pretty much a monoculture. So the lower part of the chicken area was a plant called Bahia grass, was growing pretty much everything, and then up higher was Soteria. So we had 2 grasses and that was about it. And then now over time, as a result of the impact of the chickens and us sowing in multi-species cover crop and pasture seeds into it, we've now seen much more diversity. We've got, you know, grasses come in like green panic and Rhodes grass, as well as kikuyu and things like that, along with a large number of herbs, so plantains and chicories and clovers, as well as weeds. Weeds aren't a foe here at Forage Farms. We're quite happy to have them growing. They play their role. They add to the diversity, and if you watch the livestock, they will eat them, all of them. You watch the sheep, they love farmer's friend when it's young. They love eating the trees. The cattle will peck on or have a munch on the tobacco bush if they're lacking. All those things, they play a role. They're the animal's medicine, so having those in the system is not a bad thing. They're playing a role to build it up and generally as a medicine for our stock. So we've seen that. The other big change we've seen is obviously we do natural sequence farming, where we're managing the water and trying to repair our landscape. When we first came to Forage Farms, within the first couple of months we had a rain event where we had about 50 mils of rain, and after it there was water, you know, this deep running across this little gully. It wasn't really a gully, it's just a low point in the landscape and a very small catchment feeding it above, and we had this small amount of rain and water was running off. Now we have a rain event, even if we have, you know, 100 mils, if it hasn't rained for a while, you'll see nothing moving over the ground. Where it falls, it goes into the ground, and then if it keeps raining and gets wetter, then eventually it might start moving, and we have our contours then, and their roles to slow that again and then store it. So large changes in the way water reacts with this landscape since we first arrived. Yeah, well for me, I had a year off after high school working here, which was probably my first real, I suppose, reason that I wanted to do it. Anyway, I did that and I had university deferred, so I went to uni for a year and a half on campus, and I just didn't really enjoy it. I decided that I probably had, what I wanted to do was farming. Did I need the piece of paper on my wall? Probably not, and I wasn't enjoying it, so I came home. I did uni for another 6 months or so online whilst I was here. Around the same time though, our training started to pick up, so Taiwan Park training, and Dad and Mum were off more often, which meant I needed to step up more into a management role here, and I couldn't juggle both uni and that at the time, so I decided to give a pass to uni and continue on with this, and I haven't looked back since. I've enjoyed farming. I get to the best of both worlds here. I get to do outside stuff, I get to do inside stuff, you know, marketing, sales, you know, writing up stuff on how we farm, why we do it that way, along with things in the training side of the business. Now I'm starting to do a little bit of presenting, but organising courses. So for me, it gets to fill off. I like doing lots of different things, and it gives me that opportunity. And well, Lachie can answer what he finds.
Yeah, well, I was a little bit different. I finished school only 3 years ago now, and I had no real interest in going to university. I hated school, so I figured I'd hate that as well. And I enjoyed farming, so that was the main option for me. You know, I'm not a big fan of animals. I'm more of a machinery man myself, but I still see the enjoyment in it, but I do like spending as much time as I can on the tractor, out slashing and sowing cover crop, stuff like that. I suppose for the future, I don't know if I'd want to stay running chickens for the rest of my life. I think I might go crazy. But at the moment, I'm slowly learning the ways around building contours and structures and stuff like that, and learning from Dad, and been doing a couple of jobs on other people's properties, and it's all just learning. I think that's something I'd like to do in the future, would be, you know, working with the training. Maybe not so much the talking. I don't really like the talking, but I do like sitting on the machine all day and just doing stuff. Yeah, I think that's what I'd rather be doing.
The constructor.
Not as much.
Podcast and leave you alone.
Yeah, not as much the classroom.
And how is it working so closely with Park?
It's not too bad.
They'll never watch this, so you can be completely honest.
No, it's pretty good, really. We're pretty lucky, I suppose, that we get given a reasonable amount of free rein. That started, you know, back when they started heading off to training more often. They sort of they just gave us the opportunity, so we're lucky in that regard. I know there's probably not everyone that gets given the ability to start running a farm at 20 with no real understanding of how, apart from what they'd learnt the last couple of years, or I've been on a farm my whole life, but not running chickens. So we're lucky in that aspect, and you know, they're away even more and more often now, so we've learned to step up. We've also got a good team behind us here on the farm, which helps, having good staff who are part of, you know, they have the same sort of mission and drive as to what you're doing, makes it easy. So yeah, we're lucky in that regard. We get along. We definitely have arguments. We have, you know, we talk over stuff, and we have differing opinions as to what we can do and ways we can do things, but I suppose that's natural in any sort of business. But they're happy to give it a go. So, you know, if I put forward something that's not necessarily 100% agree with, we'll test it. If it works, then it's good. If it doesn't work, I probably won't hear the end of it.
No, that's right.
But it's the same for everyone. So, you know, if Dad does something that doesn't work, we'll tell him. So, you know, that's farming. Nothing ever goes to plan. You've got to be prepared to trial stuff, and some things will work and some things won't. That's just the way it is.
The way life is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, firstly, happy to have you. Thanks for coming in and looking around the farm and chatting with us. That's a big part of what we're about, is showing people. You can tell them so much, but it's not until they actually look at what you're doing that they can see how it works and how it's different. But for people, yeah, hop on our website, foragefarms.com.au or talenparktraining.com.au, so you can learn. We've got blogs on there and videos and our socials that shows you how the farm works. We don't hide anything really behind closed doors. We're an open book, and that's a big part. You know, we run tours here, and we have schools come through. So a big part is education, which I suppose you could say a big sort of word behind that's know your farmer. For people who are, whether you're a consumer, you know, you've got to eat. So whatever you eat, whether it's meat, vegetables, fruit, whatever, you need to know the farmer, and by knowing the farmer, you then know how that food's produced. It's only that way. It's too hard any other way. But yeah, so big words, know your farmer and be prepared to learn.